champ now.
Yes, I didn't say. What are you looking so sad about, champ?
I'm surprised. I mean, I'm really insulted. I mean, that's not right what you just said.
What do you mean? What I just said?
I mean, I'm getting a drink of water. I'm late getting home, but you talking. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talking about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Clay, one time during my career, I went on a Formula One tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
Well, you've been on the tour.
What's happening, my people? It's Cat Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Box Historian bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it, can't get enough of it. Miss Cass, Al Booger, salute to everyone and welcome to another episode of Cat Sports, the Box Historian. Today, boxing tragedies. How's the family today? It's Friday. We're not going to I didn't get the profile ready today, so we're going to do boxing tragedies. I got 4 fights, including the fight of the day. where the fight resulted in one of the fighters losing their lives because of the fight. And we're going to look at 4 fights today where that happened. Okay, boxing tragedies. But how's everybody? It's Friday. We got Gabriella Fundora. I know she's in action this weekend, and a few other names. No big, huge names, but it's boxing, and that's what we want. Okay, so let's get started with our fight of the day. Okay, let's do it. Okay. Okay, excuse me for 1 moment, please. Just 1 minute. It's making that sound. Okay. Okay, yeah. There's a little technical difficulties here, but we're gonna get it. We're gonna try to get it together. Might have to work our way through it, but let's see. Try something here. But how's everybody? It's Friday. Ready for the weekend? Okay, let's try this. All right, let's get into our fight of the day. Anybody come in? Is that better, Miss Cass? Or is it still got that squeaking sound in there? We're just gonna have to work our way through that. Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah. So we're gonna go with no music because I got my laptop watered down the other day, and I ordered one because I went to the store and I ain't seen nothing I liked. Plus, they was $700-800. I ain't paying that, so I ordered one. So hopefully, what next week we get started, it'll be here. But working off the phone, and yesterday I listened to the playback. That was terrible. I felt like just erasing that whole thing off the air. That it was just all kinds of squeaking and all kinds of nonsense. But let's go with our fight of the day today. It's going to be one of the boxing tragedies. Okay, starting with the fight of the day. It's Lupe Pintor versus Johnny Owen, September 19th, 1980, titled Brave Johnny Owens Final Fight. Brave Johnny Owens Final Fight. Okay, boxing tragedies today, including the fight of the day, is also a boxing tragedy. Okay. All right. Yeah. September 19th, 1980, Pintor versus Owen. Brave Johnny Owens, final fight. Okay. Let's go with it. Work our way through this. For those who had never seen Johnny Owen perform, the impossibly thin and impossibly pale man who made his way to the ring in the Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles, California, did not appear to pose much threat, given that his opponent was the hard hitting, more robustly built bantamweight world champion, Lupe Pintor. The Welshman seemed especially outmatched, but Pintor versus Owen defied expectations. Few could have predicted the young Welshman's astonishing toughness. Few still could have foreseen the awful consequences of that toughness. Brave Johnny Owen, after giving Pintor one of the most grueling battles ever, was knocked out in the 12th round. He lapsed into a coma, and some 6 weeks later, he died. He was only 24 years old. 24 years old. Wow. And there's Johnny. Little shot of Johnny right there. Johnny Owen. 1956 to 1980. Died 6 weeks after the fight. Hailing from Wales in the UK, Owen was nicknamed the Merthyr Matchstick on account of his slender frame. Yeah, he was a real slender fighter. After a stellar amateur career, he had captured the Welsh belts, followed by the British Commonwealth and European titles. He had just once in 27 pro fights. One time, one loss in 27 fights coming into this fight. And that one loss, he was a victim of an egregious hometown decision against Juan Francisco Rodriguez in Almeria. Okay, yeah, his only loss was because of some hometown cooking his opponent got. Almeria. Now, where's Almeria? And I was kind of stumbled. I thought they was going to say America. Almeria. Anybody know where that is? I sure don't. Yeah, but that's where his one loss happened. His opponent, Juan Francisco. Sound like it's in South America somewhere. Yeah, that place right there. Okay, so yeah, his only loss. Really should have been undefeated. After that fight, the Spanish authorities held back the matchstick's purse, meaning that he went home quite literally empty-handed. Wow, they held back his purse. Now, this struggle against the disadvantages inherent to a man modest in both background and demeanor was to mark his career. But the bottom line was that no one should have doubted his having earned the chance to challenge Lupe Pintor for his world title. Now that's Pintor going up against Carlos Durante right there. Carlos Durante, one of the top bantamweights ever. Carlos Durante of Mexico. But Lupe Pintor hadn't come up the easy way either. Hardened by a rough childhood in Mexico City, he had turned to boxing as a means to ward off the larger boys who bullied him. He ran away from an abusive father, settling on the streets and engaging in combat, both licensed and unlicensed, as he sought to escape poverty. Turning pro while still a teenager, Pintor rose up the ranks before securing a title challenge against the legendary Carlos Durante in June 1979. That's where that picture right there came from. Pintor edged a controversial split decision, but the method of victory was irrelevant. He was now a world champion. Fast forward 15 months, and Pintor versus Owen was the main event for an overflow crowd. And while the title holder may have been from Mexico, the dominant Hispanic contingent of the city treated him as if he were one of their own. By contrast, Johnny Owen and his team, including his father Dick, were jeered and pelted with rubbish from the stands as they entered the arena. Wow. And there's Owen right there taking the fight to Pintor. That's Owen on the left. Defiant Arnie won. Okay. Top 100 must-see boxing fights. Okay, Defiant Arnie won. I was trying to find your channel yesterday. I couldn't find it. What is it? It's called Boxing Irony, right? I was looking for it yesterday. I couldn't find it. But yeah, I'll find what time tonight? Is it are you going on? Yeah, but Defiant Arnie has started his channel. Yeah, and he's going on tonight with a best 100 fights. Okay, yeah, I'll be there. Define on anyone might come up and help you out. Okay, yeah. But the fight of the day is Lupe Pintor and Johnny Owen. And there's Johnny Owen right there taking the fight to Pintor. Okay? But salute Define on anyone. So, in the first few rounds, the Slim Welshman shocked the crowd by bringing the fight to the heavy handed Pintor, aggressively pursuing and outworking him. Now, given his advantages in height and reach, most expected him to try and outbox the Mexican. But instead, Owen initiated a fast paced slugfest. In the fifth round, the gutsy challenger cut his opponent over both eyes, right? Cut Pinto over both eyes in the fifth round, causing him to swallow a significant amount of his own blood over both eyes and a nasty gash on his lip, causing Pinto to swallow a significant amount of his own blood. Now, Pinto came back in the sixth round, throwing hooks and uppercuts with malicious intent. And while the indomitable Owen maintained his own high output, none of his blows curbed the Mexican's damaging power. Pinto scored with heavy right hands in the early part of round seven, prompting joyful chants and firecrackers from the crowd. But Owen, undaunted, just kept coming forward and throwing leather. And in the eighth round, it was more the same, toe-to-toe warfare, with Pintor landing the more telling shots, but Owen refusing to take a backward step. Yeah, it was very surprising because Owen had significant advantages in height and reach, and everybody thought he was going to try to box, but he came out there and took it to Pintor. Yes, he did. Now here's the haunting conclusion. There's Owen going down. Then, in the ninth round, the beginning of the end. Seemingly leading on the scorecards at this point, Owen was now clearly slowing down, and a vicious right hand put him on the canvas at the end of the ninth round. The first knockdown of his pro career. His pride drove him to rise immediately rather than take the count and give himself time to recover. Having been saved by the bell, Owen fought on, insisting to his father, who trained him, that he couldn't quit now, that he was so close to winning a world title. Now, Pintor proceeded to stalk the challenger, raining down hard right hands and targeting his badly marked face. Owen was knocked down once more in the 12th round, two times in the 12th, first by a straight right hand and then by a short right hook. That blow was the last action of the fight, the short right hook, and may well be one of the most haunting punches ever caught on film. Watching it now, Owen crumples almost in slow motion before reaching the canvas. One contemporary writer claimed that the Welshman fell like a marionette that had had his strings cut. Yeah, there they are, working on Owen after he went down. Yeah, it was bad. Yeah, irony boxing. But the Define on okay, yeah, that's why I couldn't find it. Define only one is what you had to look for. Okay. Yeah, there's the unconscious carrying him out on a stretcher. And he died 6 weeks later. Never came out of that coma, right? Went unconscious and never came out of the coma. Now, both fighters were picked up after the final bell. The champion the champion Pintor was hoisted onto the shoulders of his team and paraded around the ring. The challenger Owen was eventually lifted onto a stretcher, which had not been readily available, then carried out of the arena. As Owen's entourage frantically rushed through enemy territory, some members of the frenzied crowd lobbed down debris. The man on a stretcher being carried out, they still throwing stuff down on him. Wow. Several members of Owen's team had their pockets picked. and opportunistic thieves stole corner equipment and supplies, rendering a troubling scene even uglier. Wow, that was crazy. There's Owen's funeral right there. That was crazy. This, yes, that's the funeral for Johnny Owen. Owen had two brain operations and spent a month and a half on life support before he passed away on November 4th, 1980, having contracted pneumonia in the hospital. It was later discovered he had an abnormally fragile skull, an affliction which could only have exacerbated Pintor's destructive blows. His funeral brought thousands of mourners, many of whom knew him, others who had only watched his brilliance from afar. Boxing reporters focused afterwards on Owen's shy character as much as his pugilistic talent. For Hugh McIlvanney, it was a poignant irony that the inaudible and almost invisible man found himself articulate in such a dangerous language. And they put a statue of him up over there in Welsh, in his home country. Yeah, there's a statue over there in Welsh in the UK. Now, Pintor was left distraught by the fight's outcome, only for Owen's family to encourage him to keep boxing. After all they said, it could always have been the other way around. The Mexican champion went on to retain his title 1 month after his opponent's death and competed until 1995. And that was similar to when the guy died in the ring against Max Baer. Max Baer was at the hospital with the guy's wife, and she told Max she didn't blame him because she said that could be you laying in a hospital bed. And then, which was a class act by the family, when they unveiled this statue, the family invited Lupe Pintor to come and be the one to unveil it. So that was really a class act by the family. Yeah, and Pintor went and unveiled the statue. It was put up in 2002 over in Wales in the UK where he's from. So yeah, okay. Yeah, today is about boxing tragedies. So the next one, but how's everybody today? Hope everybody's doing good. Okay, our next story is going to be, it's going to be about Davy Moore and Sugar Ramos, that tragedy. Fight to the death. Who killed Davy Moore? That was the name of a song Bob Dylan made about this fight. Okay? It is Sugar Ramos standing over him and Davy Moore on the mat. BBO Sports TV, what's happening? Boxing tragedies today, BBO. We're going to talk about 4 fights that resulted in one of the opponents losing their life. We just did the fight of the day was included. It was Johnny Owen went into a coma and died 6 weeks later in the Lupe Pintor fight, 1980. And Johnny Owen's family showed a lot of class. They told Pintor that could very well have been him. They didn't blame him. And they put a statue up of Johnny Owen over in his country in Wales. And the family, Johnny Owen's family invited Lupe Pintor to be the one to come unveil the statue at the ceremony. So that was really a good story. Okay, well, not the guy losing his life, but the way the family handled it. Okay, this one is about Davy Moore, death in his fight against Sugar Ramos. On March 21st, 1963, 2 boxers entered Dodger Stadium to fight for the featherweight championship of the world. Okay? Davy Moore, the champion, had held the title for 4 years. Now, many consider him to be the best pound for pound boxer in the sport at that time. Approaching age 30, he was planning to fight for a couple more years, long enough to earn some money, earn some serious money. Then he was going to retire and enjoy his wife's delicious cooking without having to worry about making weight. Okay? Those words, plans. Now, Arteminio Sugar Ramos was the challenger. He was young, just age 21. Ramos was in exile from his family and his homeland after Fidel Castro took power and banned pro boxing in Cuba. He was doing the only thing he knew how to do, make a living with his fists. Right? Now, Davy Moore was knocked down in the 10th round. The back of his neck snapped against the ropes when he fell. He never recovered and died 75 hours later. He left behind a young wife and 5 children. It was an accident. It was a tragedy. And it became a political issue. Governor Edmund Pat Brown called for the abolition of boxing. Governor of Los Angeles at the time, Edmund Pat Brown, called for the abolition of boxing, as did the Los Angeles Times columnist Jim Murray. A similar entreaty came from Pope John Paul the 23rd. Now, Bob Dylan wrote a protest song that excoriated everyone in boxing, including the fans and the media, for Moore's death. At the song's center is a wrenching, unanswerable question: who killed Davy Moore? Okay? Now, a year passed, then 2 years. Those who had usurped the moment, the politicians and the pontiffs, the sports writers and the songwriters, were consumed by other matters. The assassination of President John F. Kennedy, the March on Washington, Vietnam. The two people most affected by Davy Moore's death had to get on with their lives. Davy Moore's widow, Geraldine, she took a job and raised 5 children as a single mother. The other one that was most affected by it was Sugar Ramos, the new champion. He kept on fighting. Now, over 60 years have passed, and the memory of Davy Moore lingers like a whisper. Okay? The little giant. Now, he was a pint-sized sub of a man. He stood 5'3" and weighed 125 pounds when he was in fighting trim. With his horseshoe mustache and a broad chest that tapered at a 27-inch waist, he looked like a miniature lumberjack. Okay? We're going to take a look at both fighters now. Davy Moore first. There's Davy. Now, Davy Moore was born in Lexington, Kentucky. He grew up in Springfield, Ohio, after his father, a minister, took a job as a pastor nearby. He was the youngest of 9 children and the troublemaker of the family. If my parents had known some of the things I did, he told a reporter, I don't think I'd have lived to tell it now. Davy loved football, but he wasn't big enough for that. He also grew up at a time when, according to Malcolm X, every Negro boy old enough to walk around wanted to be the Knicks Brown Bomber, aka heavyweight champion Joe Louis. Davy Moore quit school to concentrate on boxing. He lied about his age. He was 14, not 16. But he told me he was 16 to be able to enter amateur tournaments and the Golden Gloves, right? He had to be 16. So at age 16, he met his future wife, Geraldine. She was an only child, also originally from Kentucky. She was the daughter of a steel worker. David and a group of his friends used to play street football by the house. During the summer, Geraldine said, they would ask for a drink of cold water, and I would bring out a pitcher of water and cups. He took a liking to me, and I took a liking to him. I thought he was a cute little fellow. He sort of caught my eye. They married in 1952, the same year Moore won the national AAU bantamweight title and powered his way onto the U.S. Olympic team. He was part of an impressive squad that won 5 gold medals in Helsinki, Poland. This team included Floyd Patterson, he was then a middleweight, and Ed Sanders, who defeated the fast retreating Ingemar Johansson of Sweden. hmm Big names in that Olympics. Moore did not medal in Helsinki. He lost a decision to South Korea's Jun Ha Kang. He returned to Springfield with few job prospects. He and Geraldine were expecting their first child. He took temporary construction work before turning pro in 1953 at age 19. Okay? Turned pro in 1953 at the age of 19. Davy Moore did. Professional boxing was a vibrant cultural force in the mid 1950s. Literally, heavyweights, Hemingway, Liebling, Schulberg, Heights, regularly wrote about the sweet sides. Stanley Kubrick was learning his craft by shooting photo spreads about boxers for Look magazine. The sport was popular TV fare, even in prime time. It didn't hurt that the heavyweight champ was white, an Italian American, a real life Rocky Marciano. This the real life, the movie Sylvester Stallone made years later. We had a real life Rocky then, Rocky Marciano. Now, Davy Moore began notching victories on the Midwest Fistic Circuit in Chicago, Dayton, Cincinnati, Detroit. He was dubbed the Springfield Rifle because he hits like a 30-06 bullet, one sports writer quipped. 30-06 bullet, one sports writer quipped. He could really punch, promoter Don Shargren said. He had a great right hand and a terrific left hook. One of the things that set him apart was he had a good jab. He would fight taller guys and out-jab them. Remember, he was only about 5'3", fighting taller guys and out-jabbing them. Wow. Moore was also discovering that his size and skin color was disadvantages. The big bucks went to the big guys, the welterweights, the middleweights, the heavyweights, not the shrimps. And with a passionate fan base that had promoters salivating on the stooges, Latino boxers were fast becoming the most lucrative drawing cards in the lighter weight divisions, where Moore was at. Moore signed with veteran manager Willie Ketchum to handle the business side of his career. Ketchum was nicknamed The Undertaker, reportedly for supplying the fresh cadavers used in Joe Louis' Bum of the Month campaign. More importantly, with close ties to gangster Frankie Carbo, Ketchum had the connections to steer Moore to a title shot. Willie always had a shadow, said Eddie Ford III, who assisted in Moore's corner. He wasn't a rabbi. He knew his job, and he knew it well. Ford was also a prominent Hollywood casting director. His grandfather was a vaudeville star. The family act was called Eddie Foy and the Seven Little Foys. Now, the Midwest was left behind as Moore faced off against hometown heroes in Panama, Cuba, Florida, and Texas. His job was to wear the black robe, as it were, against the legions of Latinos. The hub of this market was on the West Coast, in bullfighting rings and dance halls that stretched from Mexico City to El Monte, from Baja to San Bernardino. The heartbeat of the scene pulsed inside Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles, a concrete slab that anchored a seedy street just south of downtown Los Angeles and drew weekly crowds of fanatics. The man known as the Greek, George Panassus, handled the matchmaking duties, while the red-haired Arlene Eaton charmed sports writers and smoothed mobsters. George was well connected with the Mexican boxing managers, promoter Chagrin said. Arlene Eaton was a brilliant woman when it came to marketing. They were a great team. Moore made his Olympic auditorium debut in January of 1958 with a TKO victory over Mexico's Victor Manuel. He built a reputation as a Mexican killer, defeating opponents named Valdez, Salas, Delgado, Moreno, Camacho, Garcia, and Corona, all the while dodging bottles, firecrackers, rocks, and flaming newspapers. Wow. I don't have no rooters, he told one reporter. I like to have someone out there say, "Come on, Davy." I like to hear a word or two of encouragement from the crowd, but they don't come out to cheer for poor old Davy. Once, after beating Kid and a Huac in Tijuana, a live snake was thrown at Davy. When asked whether it was poisonous, he replied, "I never stopped to find out." Wow. Somebody threw a live snake at him after a fight one time. David had a degree in street, Eddie 43rd said. He knew how to handle himself. Moore often worked out at Gilman Hot Springs in the sleepy town of San Jacinto, along the old route to Palm Springs. Under the watchful glare of trainer Teddy Benham, he sweated off the pounds he gained from Geraldine's home cooking. There was nothing to do but run, spar, read the Bible, and play horseshoes. In March of 1959, Moore got his title shot at the Olympic Auditorium. Ironically, his opponent was not from Mexico, but from Nigeria, Hogan Kid Bassi, who won the featherweight crown vacated by the legendary Sandy Sadler. Moore's tonsils were infected, and he had a fever. He twice fell to the canvas after swinging and missing with punches. In the sixth round, he unleashed a barrage that staggered Bassi. He pounded away until Bassi was blinded by his own blood, and the fight was stopped. At age 26, Davy Moore was champion of the world. He returned to Springfield, Ohio, to Geraldine and the kids with a gaudy championship belt. He whipped Bassi in the mandatory rematch at the Olympic. He fought 23 times over the next 4 years, with stops in England, France, Spain, Japan, and a triumphant return to Helsinki, site of his disappointment at the 1952 Olympics. He kept busy, he said, for the money. His purses were modest. He earned the $25,000 guarantee when he beat Danny Valdez at the Olympic in 1961, which he had to split with Ketchum and Bentham and then pay taxes on it. You got to make that bread while you can, Moore told the Los Angeles Times. Man, boxing is a business. I'm in it to make money. He bought a trophy home in Columbus, large enough for a heavyweight. He and Geraldine now had 5 children: Denise, Ricardo, David, Lenice, and Davia. My husband loved boxing, Geraldine said. That was his livelihood. He didn't like being away from the family, but he made a nice living for us. We had pretty much all that we wanted to make us happy. Okay, so now let's talk about Sugar Ramos, his opponent in that tragic fight. Okay, let's take a look at Sugar. There's Sugar, Sugar Ramos, the Sugar Man. Okay, that's what they called him, the Sugar Man. Now, the way Arteminio Sugar Ramos tells it. His name is a misnomer. He was supposed to be the last, or Arteminio, of his parents' 11 children, but he asked with a wink. His parents couldn't help themselves and produced another after him. Born just days before the bombing of Pearl Harbor, Ramos grew up in poverty in the city of Matanzas. Matanzas, yeah. He cut sugarcane and quit school after the fourth grade to shine shoes for pesos. He read comic books, mostly for the pictures, he said, because he was semi-literate. Fighting was family business. His father boxed, as did one brother. I decided to go into boxing, following my father's advice, he said, through an interpreter. He always told me I had to be someone in life and in boxing. Like many Cuban kids, Ramos admired the exploits of Gerardo Gonzalez, better known as Kid Gavilan, a rugged, slick stylist who wore pompadour and white shoes inside the ring. Gavilan was known for his bolo punch, a bit of deception that scored points and made his opponents look foolish. When I was a kid, me and my friends all wanted to be like Kid Gavilan, he said. My style was similar to his. Okay, excuse me for one moment, please. Yeah, Kid Gavilan was pretty much his idol. Okay, let's continue. This is the tragic story of Davy Moore. Taking a look at both fighters right now. Let's continue. When I was, yeah, Kid Gavilan was pretty much his idol. Ramos started boxing at age 12. He claimed to have never lost in the amateur ranks, including one time when he had to ride a horse to reach the other side of the island. Just like Davy Moore, he also lied about his age to turn pro at 15 in 1957. Fighting almost exclusively in Havana, Ramos reeled off 26 consecutive victories before encountering an intractable opponent, Fidel Castro. Now, although he allowed amateur boxing and Cubans continued to compete in the Olympics, Castro banned professional boxing soon after consolidating power. Ramos was forced to decide family, homeland, and communism, or professional boxing. His last fight in Havana took place on December 30th, 1960. He joined an exodus of other established fighters, including Jose Napales and Luis Rodriguez, and left behind his parents and siblings, a girlfriend, and two children. Mm-hmm. Yep. Vacated the premises. He moved to Mexico City and placed his career in the hands of trainer Kid Rapides and manager Carlos Cuco Conde, a well-known radio announcer from Havana. Now, Miami-based trainer Angelo Dundee was hired to help with the American market. Had Angelo. This was before Ali. Yeah, Sugar Ramos. Angelo had Sugar Ramos before Ali. This was like the late 50s here. Now, Ramos' first fight, well, early 60s, Ramos' first fight on U.S. soil took place in Los Angeles, California in 1962 when he defeated Eddie Garcia at the Olympic Auditorium. The locals were impressed. He's the same kind of sugar as Sugar Ray Robinson, said trainer Howie Steidler, who operated the Main Street Gym in Los Angeles. That was Los Angeles' premier sparring site. Ramos is the best I've had in the gym since I've been here. I'm gonna have to do a show in the Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles because that's a pretty historic site as far as boxing. That'll probably come next week. Or the Olympic Auditorium, yeah, that is a pretty historic boxing site right there. Now Ramos was age 21 with a sparkling smile and skin the color of Cafe de Leche. He wore a pencil-thin mustache like a Hollywood troubadour. He loved listening to Afro-Cuban music and playing the bongos. Reporters began beating the publicity drum. Ramos was ready to challenge for Davy Moore's title. Okay? Now, Ramos was eager for the fight to happen. There was only one subject he refused to talk about. Let's keep politics out of it, he told Times columnist Sid Ziff. I'm a fighter. I'll answer anything you want about my boxing career. He didn't want to talk politics. In the United States, as in Cuba, separating boxing from politics was impossible. Senator Estes Kefauver, Democrat from Tennessee, was holding well publicized hearings at that time about the mob's influence in the ring and pushing for legislation to regulate the sport with a federal commission. Yeah, that's what they need now. Mhm. Now, safety too was in the headlines. In 1962, Benny Purett faced Emma Griffith at Madison Square Garden for the welterweight title. Purett allegedly called Griffith Murray Khan at the weigh-in. The fight turned into a slaughter as Griffith hammered Purett senseless. Purett sank slowly to the floor, wrote Norman Mailer in Esquire. And we're going to talk about that one in a moment, too. Now, Purett, after the fight, he lingered in a coma, then he died. He was age 25. And this was around the same time, a little ways before this fight, the Davy Moore tragedy. Okay? Less than 6 months later, Alejandro Lavarante faced Johnny Ricketts at the Olympic Auditorium. Lavarante was a game but overmatched heavyweight from Argentina. He had lost his previous two fights to veteran Archie Moore and the future champion Cassius Clay at the Los Angeles Sports Arena. Lavarante would fall in 5, Clay predicted, and he was accurate. Now, after Lavarante was again knocked out, he collapsed and fell into a coma. Critics used the incident to indict the sport. Boxing should have to go back to the barges, wrote Jim Murray in the Los Angeles Times. It's callous, indifferent to its own. It's disdain for the simple dignity of a human being. No civilized society can put its stamp of approval on boxing in its present form. Now, David Moore and Sugar Ramos did not need sports columnists to lecture them about the dangers in boxing. Moore's teammate on the Olympic team, Big Ed Sanders, succumbed to injuries after being knocked out in 1954. Back when he was fighting in Cuba, in the 12th fight of his career, Ramos knocked out an opponent named Jose Blanco. 4 hours later, Blanco died from a brain hemorrhage. Okay, so now let's talk about the fight then. The fight between Sugar Ramos and Davy Moore. Okay? The fight. Let me refresh the chat. Okay. So now let's talk about the fight. Okay. The fight. Now, I go wasting stuff again. The Moore Ramos matchup was considered a bonanza. Promoters John Horn and former champion Joe Louis agreed to stage the fight at the Los Angeles Sports Arena, with Moore reportedly getting $70,000. But that deal fell through. Then the fight was rumored to be going to Miami. Finally, Parnassus and Eaton devised a unique promotion, a triple header of championship fights, matching Moore versus Ramos, Emma Griffith against Luis Rodriguez for the welterweight crown, and Roberto Cruz against Ramondo battling Torres for the junior welterweight title. The date was set for March 16th, 1963. Come rain or come moonshine. The anticipated crowd was too big for the Olympic Auditorium. Eaton made a deal to stage the fights at Walter O'Malley's gleaming baseball palace, Dodger Stadium. It would be the first card held at Los Angeles' newest sports venue, with the ring positioned atop the pitcher's mound. Panasas and Eaton predicted a gate of over $300,000, along with a national TV audience. Tickets were priced at $5 to $30. Davy Moore dispatched Gil Candiff in a tune-up in February, then retreated to a cabin in San Jacinto with trainer Bentham. His share of the purse was reported $40,000. Sugar Ramos worked out at the Alexandria Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. After watching him get repeatedly tagged by right hands, Moore's best weapon, newspaper pundits installed Moore as the 2-1 favorite. Moore sounded confident. I'm going to win, he told the Los Angeles Herald Examiner's Morton Moss, but I'm not Cassius Clay. I won't pick the round. I'll take any round. His wife Geraldine left the kids in her mother-in-law's care and flew to Los Angeles for the fight. David wanted me to come out, she said. He knew that I didn't want to see him fight, but he wanted me there for the festivities after the fight. It didn't work out that way. That was his wife Geraldine. Didn't work out that way. Now during fight week, caravans of cars came from Mexico to cheer for Ramos. Ramos, Rodriguez, and Torres. There were 3 Mexican fighters on the card, remember? Now, Times columnist Jim Murray predicted a traffic jam complicated by the presence of 10,000 Mexican nationals in vintage buses and mufflers, less mercurius cornering around the parking lot on 2 wheels with clutches and brakes. Now, the day scheduled for the fight, a major storm lashed the region with rain and chilling winds. Just 15 minutes before the first fight, officials canceled the card. Wow. Panasas and Eaton tallied their losses, primarily the $70,000 television fee from ABC, and rescheduled the fight for March 21st. Namor stayed at Eddie Foy's home in Benedict Canyon. Davy wouldn't talk to anybody 2-3 days before a fight, Foy said. He was pensive, real quiet. He read the Bible. Moore and Ramos weighed in at the Alexandria Hotel the morning of the fight. Both were at 125 pounds and 1/4. Ramos had a 3-inch reach advantage. A crowd of 26,142 fanatics descended upon Chavez Ravine. Moore used the office of Dodgers manager Walter Austin to change into his togs, dark trunks with a wide white stripe along each side and around the waist. Walking to the ring, he wore a maroon and gold robe with a golden K representing Kiefer Junior High School in Springfield, Ohio. Ramos donned dark trunks trimmed with red suede, emblazoned with a horseshoe in the name of his hometown, Matanzas. Jimmy Lennon, the ring announcer, introduced the fighters with his trademark cadence. Yeah, that's the first Jimmy Lennon, Sr. Now Moore began briskly, stunning Ramos with double right hands. Ramos countered using his reach. His left jabs hurt Moore and kept him off balance. They showed mutual respect, what one observer described as a brotherhood of course of courage. Now, when the bell sounded for the end of the round, they stopped their assaults as if frozen, then patted one another admiringly before heading to their corners. As the crowd chanted, Arriba, Arriba, Ramos' jab began to dictate the pace. He cracked Moore's mouthpiece in the fifth round and sent it flying. Bleeding inside his mouth, Moore was swallowing blood. The champ rallied, his brisk counterattacks finding openings. Ramos's left eye closed to a slit, the skin beginning to turn Dodger blue. Ramos maintained a slight edge after 9 rounds. He took control in the 10th, pelting Moore with unanswered blows that sent the champ reeling to the canvas. As he fell, the back of his neck struck the lowest of the 3 strands of steel cables around the ring. He got to his feet. Ramos kept attacking. As the bell rang, Moore's head and upper torso were bent awkwardly through the ropes. Moore managed to walk to his corner. Moments later, Ketchum told referee George Lacker that Moore was through. Sugar Ramos was the new featherweight champion. He exulted in the corner with Kid Rapides, Cuco Conde, and Angelo Dundee. They were joined by Luis Rodriguez, who had avenged Benny Parrott by dethroning Emil Griffith in the first fight. The Latins have gone happy, broadcaster Steve Ellis said. Moore stayed in the ring to a TV interview. A white towel covered his head. His body slumped across the ropes for support. It just wasn't my night, he said, to a jabbering speech. In a jabbering speech. I can't fight much better. I think I can knock him out. I just couldn't get myself together. He returned to his dressing room and spoke to several more reporters. Just like you writers, if only you'd admit it. Can't write a lick some days, he told Sports Illustrated's Morton Sharnick. Well, that was me tonight. I just wasn't up to my best. Moore sat on the rub-down table in his trunks. His mouth was cut up, but his face was unmarked. His eyes were slightly unfocused. The words came softly and slowly. Suddenly, Moore slumped over. He said, I'm going out, man. I gotta go to sleep. Foy said. I looked at Willie and said, get a doctor. My head, Willie, Moore cried. My head. It hurts something awful. Ketchum, Bentham, and Foy comforted Moore. He fell unconscious. He was taken to White Memorial Hospital, a few miles from where Alejandro Lavarente lay in a coma. Yeah, the last fighter that had got hurt in the ring. What's up, Mike Mazet? How are you today? And Mike, what's up, Mike Rim? Yeah, we are talking to some boxing tragedies today. We had the fight of the day was one, Lupe Pintor. Johnny Owen died as a result of that fight, and now this one, Davey Moore and Sugar Ramos. Yeah, Davey Moore died as a result of this fight, like 70-some days after the fight. Okay, so he was in the dressing room, and that's when he lapsed into the coma, rushed into the hospital. Now, his wife, Geraldine Moore, was staying nearby at a friend's house. She was expecting a phone call from her husband. Instead, she was told that he was in grave condition. Okay? She hurried to the hospital. I was standing there, but he didn't know I was there, she said. They had him packed in ice. To see your husband lying there like that, that's a sight I won't ever forget. For 72 hours, the headlines on the front pages of the Los Angeles Herald Examiner newspaper detailed Davey Moore's deteriorating condition. Within days, doctors who examined tapes of the broadcast determined that Moore's brainstem was irreparably injured when the back of his neck snapped against the ropes in the 10th round. Other damage to his brain was noted in the official autopsy report. Then the outreach began. Remember, the governor had already tried to ban boxing before the outreach began. Governor Edmund Pat Brown, governor of California at the time, called for the complete abolition of this barbaric spectacle and proposed a statewide referendum on the sport. He urged California voters to vote pro boxing out of the state in 1964. From Vatican City, a scathing editorial in the newspaper decried the disregard for human life. Here's another crime committed in the name of the boxing, another moral taint on our civilized usages, which do not agree to dutifully prohibitions and prefer to serve the childish myths of certain largely instinctive and often unconsciously savage people. Jim Murray, he chimed in. He had wanted boxing banned. Bob Dylan wrote the song "Who Killed Davy Moore." Remember? Let me get through that. And that was a pretty big album that song was on. That was before my time, but I remember. I remember it. Okay, so boxing will never escape the specter of death and brain damage. One such incident occurred at the Olympic Auditorium in 1980 when Welsh boxer, this was the fight of the day, Johnny Owen died after losing the bantamweight champion Lupe Pintor. He was one of the last major fights at the arena. Today, the building houses a Korean American church. To this day, Dodger Stadium has never hosted another fight card. But in its brutal honesty and wretched beauty, the fight game survived to find a unique niche, even enjoying several renaissances, led by the voluble Muhammad Ali, who attracted a salon of literary luminaries, Mailer, Baraka, Plimpton, and Talese, among others. And it extended to George Foreman, Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, Oscar De La Hoya, Manny Pacquiao, and Floyd Mayweather Jr. Now, Sugar Ramos resumed boxing 4 months after Davy Moore's death. He won 6 fights in a row before losing the featherweight title to Vicente Saldivar in 1964. He never regained another championship after that. He announced his retirement several times, only to return. His final fight came at the Forum in Inglewood, California in 1972. Later, Ramos was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. But he was ultimately haunted and irked by the memory of Davy Moore. It was the highlight of his career, and it was the worst experience of his life. Why did he have to die? Ramos asked the reporter once. It was my night, my glory. I won fair and square. Then he dies, and nobody remembers that Ramos fought a great fight and won the title. The only thing they remember from that fight is Davy Moore died. Some even say I killed him. I work hard and beat him. I am not a killer. Another time he said, I have thought about Davy Moore till I cannot think about it anymore. For my first fight afterwards, I was unable to strike the other man hard. Now I hit as hard as I can. Yeah, Sugar Ramos. He was 24 at that time. I think he's still living. He lives in Mexico City, his adopted home, because he was from Cuba and then he left Cuba when Fidel Castro took over. 4 kids. He proudly delights in becoming a grandfather for the first time. His life, he says, is my tranquilla. And Geraldine absolved Sugar Ramos. Yeah, Ramos and Geraldine, David Moore's wife, met only one time at White Memorial Hospital when David Moore was laying in a coma dying. Lo siento, Ramos said, repeated, tears squeezing through puffy blackened eyes. I'm sorry. Geraldine Moore told him, you are the lucky one. It was God's act. She flew home with her husband's body. Over 10,000 people paid their respects at the funeral home, including the entire student body of Kiefer Junior High School. Moore's manager, Willie Ketchum, told reporters that he had helped the fighter amass a responsible fortune with investments in a fitness center and an annuity. Geraldine soon discovered the reality. There were few assets. Wow. Willie did not have anything set up for us, Geraldine said. After the fight, Willie and Teddy Bentham got their money. What was left wasn't a whole lot. They had it set up, but they had it set up for themselves. You know, they had it set up, but they had it set up for themselves. Now, Geraldine had to sell the big house and move to a smaller place. Governor Jim Rhodes, a Springfield native, promised help. Within weeks, Geraldine found work in Columbus as a notary clerk for the state of Ohio. Geraldine's parents and Davy's family pitched in to help her with the kids. They had 5 children. Being sad about it wasn't going to bring my husband back, she said. I was fortunate to have a wonderful support group. They were solid rocks. Boxing became a memory. Much of the memorabilia from Moore's career, photos, trophies, equipment, was lost when a fire destroyed a cultural center in Springfield. Geraldine remarried in the early 1970s, but the marriage was short lived. She kept her job for more than 3 decades before retiring in 1995. She moved back to Springfield to care for her aging father. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is Emil Griffith and Benny Parrott. Okay, Emil Griffith and Benny Parrott is the name. Crush, what's up, Crush? We're talking about some boxing tragedies today. So far, we talked about Lupe Pintor. Johnny Owen died as a result of that fight, and Johnny Owen's family was really good. They built a statue to him in the 2000s, and they invited Lupe Pintor to be the one coming and build the statue. You know, so his family was really a class act. You know, with a nice gesture when they did that. Yeah, they told Lupe it wasn't your fault. It could have very easily been you. You know, could have been the other way around. So yeah, they understood. Okay, let's talk about Emil Griffith and Benny Parrott now. Okay, and what happened in that tragic fight? That was the thumbnail. There they are. Masculinity, boxing, and the wall brawl that changed the sport. Benny Kid Parrott and Emil Griffith were both ready to fight, but it was unlikely either boxer was prepared for the outcome of their final fight. They had a trilogy. Hmm. Yeah, but I doubt, yeah, they couldn't have been prepared for what ended up happening. And this was not too much long before, like 6 months before the one we just talked about. This one happened like 6 months before that, right? Okay, March 24th, 1962. It was a Saturday night, and crowds filled the seats at Madison Square Garden. It was fight night. Benny Kid Parrott would be fighting Emil Griffith for the welterweight title, currently held by Parrott. In addition to the nearly 8,000 people crowded into the arena, there were TV sets all tuned in across the United States to watch the fight live. I don't expect an easy fight, But there's no doubt in my mind that I'll still be champion when this fight is over, Purdy told the press a few days before the fight. I've trained hard for this fight, and I don't intend losing. But what happened that Saturday night changed the fates of both men. By the end of the night, one man would be carried out of the ring, clinging to life, the other haunted by ghosts the rest of his life. Purdy and Griffith had matched up before, the first time in April 1961. They exchanged blows in Miami in front of a small crowd, just 4,618 people. And as historian Christina de Abreu explains, the fight became Purdy's first knockout of his 46 fight career and ending his 10-month reign as welterweight champion. Now, Purdy got the chance to reclaim his title 5 months later, and he did, though it was a controversial decision that was met with a mixture of cheers and raucous boos. A third fight was going to settle the score once and for all. As Abreu writes, promoters billed the fight a grudge match, stemming from Purdy's disputed gift decision over Griffith, and that both men lived in the Bronx, passing each other on the streets from time to time, only added to the sense that this was going to be a fight to see. Now there was a tension there, thick and heavy, but something about it felt like it was more than just sports and trash talk. The afternoon of the fight, Purdy said to a reporter of Griffith, "I hate that kind of guy. A fighter's got to look and talk and act like a man." There had been rumors about Griffith. In a 1963 Esquire article, writer Norman Mailer wrote that a gossip columnist had run an item about Griffith loaded with speculation about his sexuality. Now, Griffith did come out years later that he was gay, too, you know. So, yeah. But at the weigh in for that last fight, Purdy continued poking at his opponent, making a few more remarks about his manhood. They almost had their fight right there at the weigh in. Mailer wrote, "The accusation alone was enough. The sports world had its own rules and systems," explained sociologist Eric Anderson. In sports, homophobia presents itself in the form of resistance against the intrusion of a gay subculture within sports and serves as a way of maintaining the rigidity of orthodox masculinity and patriarchy. So, though homophobia was in all corners of society, it was even worse in athletics. Media scholar Ledger Grindon writes that acknowledging he was gay would have ruined Griffith's boxing career. Now, both men, this was in the 60s. The way things is now, nobody probably wouldn't even think twice about it, you know. Now, both men were ready to fight, and Purdy could take a punch. He called himself the Cuban Kid with the iron chin and was known for being able to, as Mailer put it, take 3 punches to the head in order to get back 2. And for a while, it worked. Now, though the momentum of the fight went back and forth, Purdy knocked Griffith down in the 6th round. It swung back to Griffith by the 8th round, but by the 12th round, something shifted. Mailer noted, "I had never seen one man hit another so hard and so many times. It was a barrage between 20 and 26 punches in just 9 seconds." Brew writes, "Now Purdy fell. He began to shake and foam at the mouth. The wall brawl was stopped by the referee. People struggled to understand what they just witnessed." La Prensa, a New York City Spanish language newspaper, reported Purdy touched Griffith's chest and told him that he wasn't a man, that he was homosexual. Others were more direct, noting that Purdy called Griffith a slur, but the exact wording wasn't the issue. The issue now was Purdy, who lay comatose before dying 10 days after the fight, and Griffith, who would live with the grief for the rest of his life. Yep, for the rest of his life. There's Griffith right there. In the days following the fight, and there's the weigh-in. You can see Parrott picking at Griffith right there at the weigh-in. Remember they say he was making slur and say Griffith ain't too happy about it neither. Hmm. Yeah. Now, in the days following the fight, people argued about not just Griffith and Parrott, but boxing in general. Less than a week after the fight, one ABC affiliate announced it would stop televising boxing, with others following suit. Now, Griffith did come out publicly in later years, right, that he was gay, but his truth came with violence. He was assaulted in 1992 after leaving a New York City gay bar. 30 years later, the past was not as far behind as he hoped. And though some felt a need to find someone to blame for Parrott's death, as Grindon writes, there seems to be no one to blame except for the brutal nature of boxing itself. Yeah. And yeah, you can see, look at this picture and see that they tried to blame the referee, but you can see the referee is like giving Griffith a verbal a verbal. He's giving him, he telling, look like he's calling him off, but Griffith ain't paying him no attention. And it looked like he positioned in a way he ain't even trying to let the referee come through there. You can see the referee saying something to him, give him a verbal command, so Griffith's supposed to back off. But he was pissed off. But the last one is the fight Panama Lewis and Lewis Resto. We was talking about this on the panel yesterday. Had the doctored gloves. They actually went to jail for this against Billy Collins Jr. Let's talk about that one. That's one of the four boxing tragedies today. Yeah, let's talk about that one. It is Resto and Collins. I think that's Resto and Collins. No, that's Griffith and Parrott. There's Resto and Collins, yeah. Scandal shook the world. That's Collins on the left, Resto on the right. Yeah. You had Dr. Gloves in there. It was terrible. Let's talk about this one. I think we're going to talk about it. Let's see. Oh, yeah. There it is right there. Yep. This was a bad one here. Remembering the pain and tragedy of the Billy Collins Jr. Louis Resto fight. Okay. This fight was like, I think it was like 82, 83. It was over 40 years ago, though. Over 40 years ago, on the undercard of the Roberto Duran versus Davey Moore fight in New York, two men at opposite ends of their careers met in a 10-round light junior middleweight fight. What followed forever changed the lives of both men, while the events in the ring that night also changed the sport of boxing. 21-year-old Billy Collins Jr. was a 14-0 prospect who was expected to go places. Promoted by Bob Arum and trained by his father, former fighter Billy Collins Sr., the young warrior from Tennessee was matched with a tough but not too dangerous fighter named Louis Resto. Resto, a 27-year-old Puerto Rican with a so-so 19-8 record, would in time become one of the most infamous fighters in all of boxing. The same can be said of the fight that Resto won. Okay? Trained by Panama Lewis, Resto, to the shock of everyone, was beating Collins Jr. up. Not known as an especially hard, he only had 8 knockouts. Not known as an especially hard hitter, Resto was taking the action right to the usually aggressive and exciting to watch Collins. And soon, Collins was showing real facial damage, with both eyes swelling rapidly, with his cheekbones and forehead also gruesomely deformed. right? By the end of the fight, his forehead and cheekbones were gruesomely deformed, right? So Collins had taken a real going over, yet he had managed to hang tough to the final belt. It was only afterward, when people knew what had gone on, that fans could truly appreciate just how tough Collins had been. The two men met in the ring center after the decision had been announced, and as Resto went to give Collins his respect, Collins Sr. shook hands with the man who had just beaten up his son, and instantly he noticed something was wrong. Okay, so his father shook Resto's hand, and right away he knew something was wrong. There was, he could feel, almost no padding in the gloves of Resto, right? No padding. The trainer father instantly raised the alarm bell, and Resto did all he could to pull away. This while looking over his shoulder in desperation at his own trainer, Panama Lewis. There had indeed been some serious tampering with Resto's gloves, with approximately 1 ounce of padding removed from each glove, and perhaps even worse, some plaster had been applied to each of Resto's wraps. The beating Collins Jr. took is now seen by the world as the simply horrific thing it really was. Resto denied any wrongdoing. It was all Panama's doing. Resto claimed, oh, well, he's going to throw Panama under the bus. Resto said it was all Panama's doing. Well, you let him do it. He didn't put no gun to your head, right? So you're just as much at blame. You should have been like, no, I'm going to get me another trainer. So, no, you can't blame that on Panama. Mm-mm. But Resto blamed it on Panama Lewis. He said he had messed with Resto's gloves without the fighter's knowledge. Come on, man. You know that's a damn lie. You can't feel there's no padding in your gloves? Come on, man. Only he hadn't. Years later in 2009, when the superb and powerful documentary Assault in the Ring from Eric Draft came out, Resto finally admitted to knowing about the gloves, about the plaster, and about a drug Panama gave him that aided his breathing during the fight, thus allowing him to get a second win. But he didn't have to admit that. Everybody knew that. You the one wearing the gloves. You can't feel the padding is missing. Okay. Now Resto stating that the drug was something that asthma patients were administered. So not only doctor, the glove gave him some kind of illegal drug to aid his breathing. I guess it said it gave him extra energy, gave him a second win. Now all of this was some years ahead, but for now, both fighters would train and trainer, both fighter and trainer paid the price. Panama Lewis was jailed for 1 year, Resto for 2.5 years, while both men had their licenses taken away. Yeah, Resto should have got more time because he was the one that actually went there and did it. You know, they both should have got time, but Resto should have. He did get more, and he should have. So they say he didn't know, right? So yeah, Panama Lewis got 1 year. Resto had 2 years in prison. Okay, and the licenses were taken. Resto would never fight again. Lewis would never again be permitted to enter the ring as a trainer. But for Collins Jr., it was much worse. Falling into a fit of depression, his career ripped from him due to the severity of his facial injuries. Never fought again. The father and husband, he had children and he was married, began drinking heavily. And by accident or on purpose, he crashed his car into a creek near his home, dying at the scene. They don't know whether he did that or committed suicide or whether it was an accident. This was on March 6, 1984. Billy was just 22 years old. Wow. That wasn't too much longer after the fight because he was just 21 when they had the fight, remember? Wow. Should have got more than 2.5 years. Right? That's manslaughter. You know? Okay, so yeah. He died age 22. Now, the events that took place inside Madison Square Garden 42 years ago have never been forgotten. and they never will be. How could such a thing have been permitted to slip through the rules and regulations? How could such a disgraceful act of barbaric cheating not have been detected? Panama, we found out from Resto in the film, attended to its evil doing in the bathroom of the dressing room. Resto, who is shown and continues to show real remorse over what happened, has clearly suffered. That said, the hate some people have for the former fighter remains. Panama Lewis, who passed away in September 2020, never showed any remorse, nor did he ever admit to any wrongful doing. There were no obituaries written when Panama Lewis died. A man's life was all but taken on the night of June 16, 1983, while a promising ring career was cruelly taken. Some people firmly believe Panama Lewis was the real bad guy. No, both of them. You can't put it all on Panama Lewis. You got to put it on the fighter too. He was the one that went in and actually executed the deed. So no. Some people truly believe for Panama Lewis, they both were the bad guy, the man behind the sickening plan. Yet others say Resto was in on it. He was in on it. He admitted it and was just as guilty. He was. That's why Resto got more time in prison. Panama knew what he had sent this fighter out to do, and the fighter knew what he was going out there to do. That was to inflict what he must have known would be excruciating pain by illegal violence on another boxer. Now, while Resto surely knew he was fighting with a deck that was so very heavily stacked in his favor that he was hitting his opponent with doctored gloves, and he had the plaster in him. Would Billy Collins Jr. have forgiven either man had his life not ended so prematurely and so tragically? We will never know. But there are plenty of people out there who will never forgive Lewis or Resto, and who can blame these people. And I'm one of them. That was terrible, man. You know, doctor took the padding out of the gloves and then took an illegal substance too, right? And the padding in the gloves was worse because that's directly going to hurt them. And the man ended up dying. They never figured out, whether he crashed his car on purpose or whether it was an accident. But it likely was on purpose. It likely was a suicide. He went into depression. He started drinking. 21 years old. He could never box. He was just 14-0 at the time, right? Yeah, that was terrible. Nasty work. Ain't that how they say it? Nasty. That was nasty work. Yeah. Nasty work. Okay, one more thing. I wanted to look at some of the since this cheating. Oh, let's look at this real quick. If I can find it. Okay, yeah. What were some of the most disgraceful things in boxing history? Since we just talked about that, probably was the most disgraceful thing right there. But what were some other disgraceful things? And that's the question, right? Because I think that was the most disgraceful thing right there. Lewis Resto and Panama. Well, Panama Lewis was a known sleazeball. You know, he was the one that told Aaron Pryor, "Hand me the bottle when I fixed up." But we gotta admit that the second fight Aaron Pryor had Emmanuel Stewart, and he was fighting clean, and he beat Arguello even worse. So, we can't blame that on the assisted battle because he beat Arguello fighting clean the second for Emmanuel Lewis the second fight even worse, stopped him earlier. So, when most people talking about that, and they always talk about the first fight in the battle in Panama Lewis, and they conveniently forgot the second fight he beat Arguello even worse with Emmanuel Stewart. They conveniently forget that part. That part. Here's some other disgraceful things. Because that was the most disgraceful right there. It'll be hard to top that. I ain't gonna sit up there and say, "Oh, Panama Lewis told me to do it." Like you didn't know. You can't feel your gloves and something not right about them. Then found out he had that stuff. What he ejected that substance while you were sleeping, and then he admitted that he knew, but he didn't have to admit it. Everybody knew. He already knew what the deal was, right? Had to know, and he got the most time in prison, and rightfully so. They both should have went, but he did deserve the most time because he executed the act. Okay, he was the one that executed the act. Went out there knowingly with his gloves loaded. Now, some of the most disgraceful things. The 1919 fight of the, well, not disgraceful. That wasn't disgraceful. Okay. Now, the 1919 fight of the century. This is something alleged. Jack Dempsey versus Jess Willett. Rumors and aftermath. Now, Dempsey's 1919 title win over Jess Willett in Havana has long been shadowed by allegations that Willett was drugged or intentionally impaired. Nat Fleischer's era in systemic corruption, mid 20th century. Repeated instances of fixed fights, mob involvement, and promoters controlling rankings and titles. Jake LaMotta's fixed fight, 1947. Yeah, him and Billy Fox. Yeah, Jake later admitted he took a dive in this fight to secure a title shot. Hmm. And he had to pay $20,000. The Tony DeMarco Carmen Basilio era corruption and management abuse. Numerous attempts where managers and promoters signed exploitative contracts, withheld purses, and colluded to control matchmaking. Is BBO in here? I'll get ready to talk about BBO's boy. Oh, he ain't in here. Don King's documented manipulations, 1970s to now. Multiple lawsuits, accusations of financial duping, coercion, and arranging unfavorable contracts to fighters such as Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, and others. The one we just talked about, the most disgraceful act in boxing history, Louis Resto versus Billy Collins Jr. Yeah. Panama Lewis, thumbtacking, and tampering, multiple incidents. Lewis was implicated in multiple instances of glove or wrap tampering, including the Resto case. Later accusations surfaced in fights involving other boxers. The murder of Billy Collins Jr. and in circumstantial ties to boxing corruption. Yeah, because he crashed his car, and they say it could have been suicide. And they said Collins died under suspicious circumstances after being pressured by mob linked promoters and experiencing career ruin following Louis Resto fight. Corruption of judging and the fixed decision era. Multiple decades, even now. High profile controversial decisions. Pacquiao versus Marquez. They say Tyson busted Douglas the counts and all that kind of stuff, but no, I don't believe that. Mm-mm. Let's get some late time now. That wasn't no long count. Tyson just got his butt beat. That's all that happened. Okay? That's all that happened. Wasn't no long count. No. Okay, I'm gonna drop the link in. Anybody's welcome to hit the link. And I got something else if nobody does hit it. But it's Friday. I hope I sound okay. I'm on the phone. I ordered a new laptop. Remember I dumped the water in the one the other day. I went to the store, but I didn't find nothing I like. And them things like $700, $800. I said, man, y'all got to be crazy. I ran out of there. So I ordered one at a reasonable price. It should be here Monday. We should be back good by Monday. But man, yeah. I ain't bad no $700 for no laptop. They got to be crazy, man. Yeah, $700 for a laptop, man. Can you believe that? Damn. Last time I bought one, I paid like 170 or something. God damn. Asked the guy behind the counter, is that the real price? He was like, yeah. Wow. Okay, yeah, let me get the link in there. Yeah, we got Gabriella's tomorrow. Pandora fighting. I'm gonna check that out. She's 5'9", 5 foot, just like her brother. What is he like 6'7" at junior middleweight? She's 5'9" at 112. I think she's still at 112. Yeah. So, but she gonna have to move up eventually because she only like 22, 23. So there ain't no way she gonna keep making no 112. Even if she wasn't 5'9", that's the natural things of life. She gonna get older and gonna start putting on weight. She ain't gonna be able to shed all that weight going down to 112. No way. And it probably will be soon, you know. I would say. What was that? Oh, I was okay. I'm supposed to put the link in. Copy. Define only one has his channel going now. Supposed to do something tonight. If he's still in here, we're gonna talk about it. Yeah, there's the link. They had something about why did Roberto Duran beat Sugar? I mean Tommy Hearns beat Roberto Duran so bad. Why did that fight turn out like that? When Tommy Hearns had trouble with Sugar Ray Leonard, and then Roberto Duran beat Sugar Ray Leonard, but that triangle theory don't work. We know that. Styles make fights. Tommy Hearns had the style to beat Roberto Duran bad. You know, all that height and reach advantage he had over him. Let's talk about that though. Why did Roberto Duran Roberto Duran lose so easily to Thomas Hearns? That'll take us on out of here to Just Do Boxing at 4 p.m. Don't forget to subscribe to Crush the Legend too. 9 a.m. Monday through Friday. One of the best shows on YouTube. Might be the best. One of them, for sure. Okay. Yeah, let's talk about that. Why did Roberto Duran lose so easily to Thomas Hearns? Interesting fight. Okay, let's talk about it. Do we have a picture of them? Nope. That's Louis Resto and Billy Collins Jr. Let's see how bad Billy Collins Jr. face was looking. That's him in the background. See it? Wow. That's because of what, no padding in his gloves, man. And Billy Collins was tiring over the course of the fight, and Resto had that stuff in his system. You know, he wasn't getting tired or anything. He was getting a second win. But yeah, why did Roberto lose so bad to the Hitman, the Hands of Stone? Now, Roberto Duran's 1984 loss to Thomas Hearns, second round TKO, June 15th, 1984, Caesar's Palace, right? It looks abrupt on the record, but reflects a clash of styles, physical condition, tactical choices, and a short tactical window in which Hearns' attributes were decisive. Okay? Key factors: styles and physical mismatch. Hearns' height, reach, and punching power. Hearns 6 foot 1 inches tall, had an 84-inch reach, right? Was it 84? Yeah, 80 something. He was taller, rangier, and carried live one punch knockout power in both hands. His jab and straight right left hook upstairs were ideal weapons against the shorter, crouched inside fighter Duran. And Hearns had an all time great jab and an all time great right hand. So that is some combination there. Now, Duran's inside fighting strengths were neutralized. Duran's best work comes at close range, using body shots, hooks, and pressure. Hearns kept distance with a sharp jab and accurate long punches, preventing Duran from imposing his inside game, right? Never got that inside game off the ground in that fight at all. Early aggressive forward movement into the wrong range. Now, Duran charged repeatedly into exchanges before he had closed distance consistently. That exposed him to long, clean counters rather than letting him work into clinches or body position. Lack of effective feinting or angle setting. Duran didn't consistently create the angles or timing needed to slip Hearns' jab and get inside without eating counters. Okay, and a Hearns counter, any Hearns counter can end the fight, right? Head position and defense. Duran's head was often upright and not tight to Hearns' chest, leaving him vulnerable to the straight right and uppercuts when he attempted to come in. Yeah, he had to go through too much to get his head to Hearns' chest. Never had a chance to get in there. Physical and camp considerations. Okay, where from a long career and weight class transition. Duran had been fighting at multiple weights and styles for years. His reflexes and punch resistance were not as fresh as in his prime, lightweight era. Moving between weight classes and the cumulated moving between weight and the cumulative mileage of hard fights reduced his ability to absorb heavy, well placed shots from a top puncher. And you talked about top puncher. This was top of the top, Thomas Hearns. Top of the top. You talking about top puncher. Top of the top. I'm gonna take this out because we're getting out of here at 4. We're getting out of here at 4 o'clock. Okay. Conditioning and ring rust theories. Some analysts note Duran's timing and dynamism weren't at peak level. Even if not visibly gassed, his ability to take punishment and reset after heavy counters seemed diminished. Hearns at peak executing ideal game plan, right? Hearns fought with disciplined distance control, a stiff, snapping jab to the face and body, then firing a straight right and hooks when Duran attempted to close. psychological, and momentum advantage. Early clean shots that stunned Duran changed the fight's rhythm. Hearns, confident and precise, pressed the advantage until the referee stopped it. Short fight dynamics amplified disparities. Now, because the fight ended in round two, there was little time for the red to adjust tactics, make feints, off ball movement, trapping the jab, working the lead leg, or clinching. Yeah, he didn't have enough time to make any adjustments, right? It ended early in the second round. Now, in long fights, inside fighters can adapt in a couple round scenarios. Against a powerful outpop boxer, vulnerability is magnified. Typical observed sequence examples from the tape. Now, round one and two. Hearns establishes his jab, lands long straight rights as Duran lunges. Duran's punches either miss high or land on gloves. A heavy right hand drops Duran in round two, followed by a barrage prompting the stoppage. The tape shows precise timing by Hearns and exposed entry attempts by Duran. Okay? The loss was not a simple Duran got beat story, but the result of an unfavorable stylistic matchup. Hearns' peak physical and tactical execution, and Duran's inability to get into his preferred range or to absorb a reset after early heavy counters. When a power puncher with superior reach controls distance and lands clean in the opening rounds, even all time inside specialists can be finished quickly. And the main reason for this fight going the way it was unfavorable stylistic matchup. That said in a nutshell about this fight. Now, what specific tactics could Durant have used to counter Hearns' reach advantage? Okay, was there anything Durant could have done? Just do boxing in the building. What's up, Just Do? We was talking about how bad Hearns beat Durant. Just Do. The main reason was just unfavorable style matchup. But was there anything Durant could have done? Let's see. What specific tactics could Durant have used to counter Hearns' reach advantage? Okay, because it was a very significant reach advantage. Now, Durant could have employed several specific tactics to counter Hearns' reach advantage. Number one, effective head movement. Slip and roll. Durant could have utilized head movement to evade Hearns' jab and straight punches, slipping to the side or rolling undershots to close the distance without being hit. But what happened was, before he could do any of that, Durant got hurt real bad early in that fight, and then all that was out the window. His head was too foggy to even think about this. Because remember, after the first round, Durant was hurt so bad he went to Hearns' corner when the bell rang. His team had to come over there and get him and take him to his corner. That's how bad he was hurt. So that's why he didn't utilize and execute any of the stuff that he normally would have did. He was hurt real bad. He went to the wrong corner, and it stayed, or his team had to come get him. Even after he got there, he still didn't go to his corner. They had to come over there and get him. Say, Roberto, you in Hearns' corner. He could have ducked and weaved. By lowering his head and weaving under Hearns' punches, Durant could have created opportunities to get inside. Feinting, set traps. Using feints to draw out Hearns' jab would allow Durant to gauge his timing and create openings for countering or slipping inside, create distractions. The feints could make Hearns commit to punching, opening up gaps for Durant to exploit, cutting off the ring. But he didn't have to cut off the ring because Hearns wasn't running. Hearns was right there in front of him. So, cutting off the ring was that's not even wasn't even a part of that because they were right there, you know, in the middle of the ring. So there was no need for the red to cut off the ring. Okay. Now, what some other notable fights that showcase similar style mismatches in boxing history? Had some similar style mismatches, like Foreman and Frazier was one. Don't have to be the exact mismatches, but with stylistic mismatches that the other fighter never was going to win. Everybody got a puncher's chance, but man, these fights, wow. I don't even know if they had that. Duran, Hearns, Frazier, Foreman. Those are just tough style mismatches. That's part of the biggest one I can think of. Frazier, Foreman. Other than that one, okay. And that's going to be about it for today. Hope everybody enjoyed it. We will be back Monday with another one. We got Gabriella Fundora in action this weekend, right? The Towering Inferno's little sister. I think she's undisputed at 112. I think she's the youngest undisputed person out there right now, too. Gabriella Fundora. And I can't remember who else was fighting this weekend. But yeah, Just Do Boxing is coming on Nate's in these streets. I'll be back tomorrow. Don't forget BBO Sports TV at 8 o'clock and the Sports Talk Network, the rest of the Sports Talk Network. Get some good boxing talk over there. And everybody have a great weekend. Oh, that's right. I went to turn the music off. Ain't no music on. Peace.